watching this film as someone who works in this field, one of the things that I was most struck by was how realistic the victim's response to the trauma was, and that she she demonstrated a lot of the things that sometimes confuse people when we see this behavior from an assault survivor. For example, the fact that she went to the football game the next day and took a selfie with her friend, and that was used as like, look, she's fine. This must not have happened. And I'm wondering, since Lauren and Andrea both work directly with survivors, if either of you want to speak to anything else that rang true about the way that the survivor was portrayed.
I had the same reaction. I think memory is not linear, particularly when you've just survived a recent trauma.
Yeah.
And I felt like they drew negative inferences because she left out some details during an initial interview with law enforcement. She didn't mention she had been drinking. She didn't. I think there was a time she didn't mention that she had gone to the frat house. There was a couple of details that she left out in the first interview, and then as time unfolded, she was remembering more and more, and the timeline was coming to her more and more. And that's something we see very, very commonly.
And thank you, Andrea. And Lauren, you work directly with college students who are victims and survivors. Can you say a little bit about your real life experience with survivors and what we saw in the film?
Yeah, I think it was pretty accurate. I mean, even the way she was kind of like uncomfortable and like laughed at a couple of their questions, they were uncomfortable questions, and some people, that's just their reaction. Like when you're in an uncomfortable situation, you laugh or you cry or you freeze. You don't say anything.
I don't remember. Did you see him after that night? Did he contact you?
When I'm training, I'll say like, you can tell like a person's body language. I often give the example of if somebody takes their shirt off and somebody runs out of the room, their body language is not consensual. You can usually like tell. You cannot have consent if somebody is incapacitated. So the different ways that incapacitation looks are passed out, unconscious, involuntarily restrained, under the influence of drugs or alcohol, which, as we know, is probably the biggest one. Mm-hmm. And a lot of students tend to kind of be shocked when I tell them that, because it does make you take a step back and think of, oh, wow, I've done this before. It kind of gets you thinking and your gears rolling like, oh, wow, was my entire college career not consensual? But you want to start thinking like that. You want to like pay attention to that's technically not legal. If a person is incapacitated, they can't legally give consent. What else points do I have? Oh, you have to get consent every time. Just because you consented last week doesn't mean that you will give consent this week or the day after. It has to be a conversation every time. What else? Oh, consent can be withdrawn at any time. So I think as a society, we feel really guilty when it comes to stuff like that. If you start in the act with somebody and you realize, oh, wow, I don't really want to do this, or I'm not comfortable with this person, you're allowed to not have, you can stop. And then if that person doesn't stop after you voice that, then again, that would be an assault as well. That would be unconsensual.